Okay, let's dive right into this. Have you ever stopped to consider that your brain doesn't actually experience the world directly? Seriously, think about it. It's permanently locked inside a dark, completely silent vault, your skull. So, everything you see, hear, and feel, it's essentially a biological simulation constructed entirely from electrical signals. Today, in this explainer, we're going to look at the human machine. We'll explore exactly how our sensory hardware captures the universe and how our perceptual software builds the reality we experience every single second.
To do this, let's initiate a quick boot sequence. Here's our diagnostic checklist for today. First up, sensation versus perception. Then, psychophysics and detection limits. Visualizing the world. The mechanics of sound, chemical and mechanical senses, and finally, glitches in the matrix.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, sensation versus perception. So, the absolutely crucial thing to grasp here is the divide between sensation and perception. Sensation is just our hardware at work. It's the raw data gathering. And honestly, our hardware is incredibly powerful. We have an operational limit known as our absolute threshold. Get this, the human eye can detect the absolute threshold equivalent of a single candle flame burning 30 miles away. 30 miles! Where our ears, we can hear the tick of a watch from 20 feet away in a quiet room. That raw data collection, that's sensation. Perception, on the other hand, is the software. It's how our brain actually organizes and interprets that raw data to make it mean something to us. Now, you might be wondering how we connect the two. Well, the ultimate data conversion protocol that bridges our sensory hardware and our perceptual software is called transduction. This is the magic moment where physical energy from the outside world, like light waves or vibrating air molecules, is translated into the electrical impulses that our nervous system can actually read and transport up to the brain. Moving right along to section 2, psychophysics and detection limits.
Take a look at this threat assessment algorithm. It's known as signal detection analysis. When we're trying to pick out a really faint stimulus against background noise, there are 4 possible outcomes: a hit, a miss, a false alarm, or a correct rejection. Think of a soldier on guard duty listening for a snapping branch in the dark, or, even just you waiting for a super important text message in a really noisy room. A miss could be deadly, or at least highly problematic. So your brain might adopt a lenient response bias, which results in a whole lot of false alarms. It turns out our perception isn't just about pure hardware sensitivity, it's heavily influenced by our current motivations and the actual consequences of being wrong.
And that brings up a pretty great question. How much does a stimulus actually need to change before your system even registers it? This is known as the difference threshold, or the just noticeable difference. This perfectly illustrates a concept called Weber's law. Okay, let's say you have a cup of coffee with just 1 teaspoon of sugar in it. If you add a second teaspoon, you are definitely going to taste that difference. But if your coffee already has, say, 5 teaspoons of sugar, adding a 6th barely even registers. Weber's law tells us that our detection software operates on constant proportions, not raw numbers. We detect percentage changes. This is exactly why you can hear a pin drop in a quiet library, but you literally have to shout to be heard at a rock concert. All right, on to section 3, visualizing the world. Let's trace the precise optical boot sequence. Light passes through the transparent cornea, enters the pupil, and is focused by the lens right onto the retina at the back of your eye. The retina is basically our receptor grid, and it's packed with specialized neurons. We've got rods for detecting dim light and cones for seeing rich, detailed color. From there, the data gets funneled through the optic nerve directly into the visual cortex. When it comes to color, it's pretty wild. Our system uses 2 complementary algorithms. Down at the hardware level, we rely on the trichromatic theory. Our retina has 3 types of cones specialized for red, green, and blue light. But at the software level, once that data moves to the brain, we use the opponent process theory. Here, colors are analyzed in opposing pairs, red versus green and yellow versus blue. That's exactly why you can easily picture a yellowish green, but try to picture a reddish green. You can't. It is basically impossible for your brain to compute. But obviously, vision isn't just about colors. It's about form and motion. Our visual cortex applies Gestalt principles, meaning it automatically organizes raw data into a meaningful whole. A classic example is the beta effect. When you sit down to watch a movie, you're actually just looking at a rapid-fire sequence of still images. But your perceptual software fills in the gaps, creating the flawless illusion of smooth motion. You literally see more than just the sum of the raw parts. Which brings us to section 4, the mechanics of sound. Sound processing is just a spectacular mechanical relay. Sound waves are funneled by the outer ear, the pinna, down into the eardrum. The eardrum vibrates, moving 3 tiny little bones called the ossicles, which in turn vibrate the fluid-filled cochlea. Inside the cochlea are microscopic hair cells called cilia. Now, these are so unimaginably sensitive that a movement pushing them by the width of a single atom triggers the auditory nerve. Just to put that into perspective for a second, that's like the very tip of the Eiffel Tower swaying by just half an inch. Looking at our audio input monitor here, we can see decibels, which is a logarithmic scale of loudness. A typical conversation is sitting right around 60 decibels, while a jackhammer is way up at 130 decibels. Now, what you really should take away from this is the strict hardware limit. Prolonged exposure to sounds over just 80 decibels can cause absolute permanent damage to those microscopic cilia we just talked about. Once they're gone, they're gone. To decode pitch, our brain uses dual algorithms. First, the frequency theory suggests that the nerve impulse rate matches the sound pitch perfectly. So, a 600 Hz tone fires 600 impulses a second. But wait, neurons actually can't fire fast enough for really high pitches. So for those, they use a rapid volley system, firing in sequence to keep up. Furthermore, the place theory helps out, where different physical locations along the cochlea respond better to different pitches. Let's look at Section 5, Chemical and Mechanical Senses. Our skin is packed with thousands of nerve endings to process touch, though interestingly enough, only pressure actually has its own dedicated specialized receptors. Sensations like hot, cold, and pain are actually synthesized from combinations of different nerve endings. We also have our chemical senses, taste and smell, which literally sample airborne and dissolved molecules from our environment. And crucially, hidden deep in our inner ear is the vestibular system, liquid-filled canals that act as a biological gyroscope to keep us balanced. It's exactly why you get dizzy after spinning in a circle. The fluid keeps moving after you stop. Working right alongside that gyroscope is proprioception. This is the essential feedback loop running through our skin, joints, and bones that tells the brain exactly where all our limbs are in physical space. Without proprioception, our physical hardware would crash every single time we tried to walk, play sports, or even just stand upright in a dark room.
And finally, Section 6, Glitches in the Matrix.
Do me a favor and take a second to just listen to the ambient hum of the room you're in right now. Maybe it's a computer fan or the AC, or notice how you don't actively feel the clothes resting on your skin. You probably weren't noticing any of it at all until I just mentioned it, right? This is sensory adaptation. Our system deliberately decreases sensitivity to constant stimuli to save processing bandwidth for new, potentially dangerous changes in our environment. Interestingly, our eyes only avoid this fading effect because they actually make thousands of tiny, completely imperceptible movements called saccades every single minute, keeping the image falling on fresh receptors. And then, of course, we have outright illusions. Check out the Ponzo illusion. Your raw visual data, the sensation part, is showing you 2 horizontal yellow lines that are exactly the same size. But your perceptual software sees the converging vertical lines as train tracks receding into the distance. It automatically calculates that the top yellow line must be further away, and therefore, it artificially inflates its size in your mind's eye. Your expectations literally override the raw data coming in. Which leaves us with this final, kind of wild thought. We've seen how transduction converts energy into data, how our thresholds filter that data, and how our brain routinely edits and organizes it to create a seamless daily experience. The human machine is an absolute marvel of biological engineering. But if our perceptual software is constantly altering, adapting, and even outright inventing parts of our experience just to help us survive, how much of what you're experiencing right now is actual objective reality, and how much is just an elaborate, brilliantly optimized biological simulation? Take that thought with you today. Until next time, keep questioning what you see.